I'm here to talk to you all today about trial law, not so much the specifics about trial law, but sort of my journey into trial work and how I got there and what it takes to work as a defense attorney in the criminal legal system. So as an introduction, my name is Myra Amir. Basic information about me. I went to UCLA for college. After that, I went to Golden Gate University School of Law in San Francisco. This is a public interest law school, and I intentionally wanted to go to a public interest law school because I knew that I wanted to do public interest work. So it's very different when I went to a UC, that's a private school. Oh my gosh, there was like 40,000 people there, you know, the class lecture rooms were so large. And so when I went to a small private school for law school, it was a very different experience, but one that alhamdulillah was like very, very rewarding. And so for work experience, right now I work at the Santa Clara County Public Defender's Office. Now, a lot of people may not know what a public defender is, and I am happy to do a whole other presentation about that because I could talk about that for days, but I'm a deputy public defender. In every county, there is one public defender who is my boss, and then there are hundreds of deputies below her. And so we represent people who can't afford an attorney, basically. And so I help people who are charged with crimes. Before that, I did civil stuff. So right now I do criminal defense. Before that, I did civil defense, and I worked at the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley. That's here in San Jose, and I was a staff attorney. I was helping people, largely the same clients I have now who are charged with crimes. I was helping those people on the civil end of things, helping them find affordable housing, helping them apply for public benefits. If they were being illegally evicted from their homes, I was helping them, I was representing them there. And I made the switch when I was here at the Law Foundation. I decided that I wanted to make the switch and do criminal defense and help those same people. And then when I was in law school, I interned at the ACLU of Northern California. I was an intern there. I worked on their death penalty policy project, and that was very eye-opening as well. And also, the reason why I listed one law school internship is because that was very, as I mentioned, eye-opening and into my current role right now in criminal defense. There's a lot of intersectionalities here. And so I'm here to talk about required education and experience if you'd like to pursue a career in law and specifically trial law. So for education, like most jobs, you do need a 4-year undergraduate degree. It's not required to major in pre-law. To be really honest, I don't actually know what the pre-law major is. I don't think it's a real thing. You can major in anything and still go to law school. I majored in psychology. I know some people went the pre-med route and then they decided to come back and pursue law school. You can major anything from music. If you do have an interest in political science, I think that would be fine. It's definitely not required though. And then of course you would have to go to a 3-year or a law school, which is 3 years at an ABA accredited institution. So that is an institution, the American Bar Association, the ABA. There's some institutions that are not ABA accredited, and I believe if you do end up going to those institutions, I think you can only practice in the state of California. And while that may not be a big deal to some people, you never know where life will take you. And so my advice would be it's best to go to an ABA accredited one. And those are generally the better law schools anyway. And that's to get your JD, your Juris Doctorate. After law school, though, you need to pass the California bar exam to obtain your license to practice law. You can't practice with a JD. You need to have a license issued by the California State Bar Association. So this is the grueling licensing exam. It's a horrible exam. It's very tough, but it's doable, of course. Hundreds of thousands of people have passed it. But this is sort of like the climax of your law school experience. Now, there's other ways to to become a lawyer. I didn't touch on that because it is so rare, but you can, instead of going to law school, you can get an apprenticeship at some law firm under their guidance and supervision. You can work and then you take the bar exam. That's very untraditional and not very common. And so I didn't really touch too much on that, and I don't really advise that. And then just like many fields, there's continuing legal education, there's continuing education. So it doesn't stop after law school. I'm required every 3 years to do mandatory training in the areas of ethics, new law developments, things of that nature. And I want to take a moment to talk about now national ranking and reputation, because we are, again, talking about requirements. So I, as I mentioned before, am a public interest attorney. I work with people who are underrepresented, underprivileged. And so I dedicated my career essentially to helping these people. And so for pursuing that kind of work, you don't need to go to like a top, what we call in like the legal world, a top 14 law school. Those are like your Ivy Leagues, like Stanford, Yale, et cetera, et cetera. Those are not required. If you would like to go into corporate law and enter the corporate world, that is required. You must go to a top 14 law school. And so that's why I also took a moment to mention at the beginning that Golden Gate is a public interest law school. So I was there. I went there because they offered me a generous scholarship. I knew that I wanted to work in public interest. And so it was a good fit, alhamdulillah, and I had an amazing experience. A lot of people don't enjoy law school, actually. They have horrible memories from law school. I have such fond memories, and actually I enjoyed it more than undergrad, because in grad school, you're focusing on something you're genuinely interested in. So I enjoyed every class. I was with people who wanted to do the same type of work. So I was with like-minded individuals, and alhamdulillah, it was a great experience for me. So national ranking and reputation is not required for public interest law. In fact, of course, you get into the best law school that you want to get into, the one that gives you the most money, whatever it is, it's a personal decision that you need to make. Just to give you an example, I work with people who went to actually Harvard Law, and they still do public interest work. So it's not that you can't do that. I also went to people who went to Golden Gate here with me, who were in my class, and we work together now. A lot of people, because I work at the Santa Clara County Public Defender's Office, a lot of people went to Santa Clara University because it's very close by, and so they live in the area. So certainly it won't preclude you, really won't stop you from getting a job in this area, but it's not required. Experience, though, what is required if you want to pursue a job such as mine is a demonstrated, that's usually a quote that and I quoted them too, because it's a demonstrated interest in public service versus the corporate world during and after law school. So when you decide to get into law school, they will look at your legal internships and like what you did during that time, and then after, of course, what sort of jobs you pursue. So a demonstrated interest in helping your community and public generally is definitely required. So for the required aptitude for success in this job, I think at the top of the list is definitely you have to be comfortable public speaking. So much of this job, my job as a trial attorney, is litigation. Like you're fighting things out, with the other side. You are advocating for your client. Oftentimes you go to trial. Right now I'm preparing for trial, and you have to talk to a room of strangers when you're picking a jury. You have to then argue to the jury. You have to persuade the jury. It's a lot of talking, and that is definitely something that's necessary. This is very different from many corporate lawyers, for example, probably never go to court. A lot of their time is spent reviewing contracts, especially if they are lawyers for a corporation. A lot of times it's contract review, document review. But for example, I'm in court 4 times a week. So there's a lot of courtroom advocacy. Analytical thinking, very important. You have to be able to interpret the law and argue the case on behalf of your client. So I represent people accused of crimes, and then the other side is the prosecution or the government, the people that are charging my clients with crime. So there's two sides, and both sides view or interpret the same law very differently. And so we have to make a case in front of the judge, and then it's the judge who decides who is right. So to be able to read a case or argue a new law that's like not yet, I guess, reviewed by like the Supreme Court, for example, is very important to be able to review, be able to analyze that and argue it on behalf of your client and in your client's best interest. Multitasking is very important and something that I still struggle with because I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and I'm realizing that you can't do it all and you cannot do it all perfectly. So this is something I still struggle with, but it is required. To be social or somewhat of an extrovert, the reason why I put an asterisk there is because I'm not really sure if it's required. It is certainly something that can benefit you, especially in this field where you're constantly talking and interacting with people. But if you are an introvert, I mean, please don't think that this precludes you from pursuing this career. I think over the years, I've become a lot more introverted myself, but I think if I were to classify myself, I would say that I'm an extroverted introvert. I can still do the job. Alhamdulillah, I've been doing this for 5 years now. But it is a lot, you know, especially with COVID and the pandemic. I actually, back in March of 2020, I never stopped going to work because this job, which I will explain a little further along in my presentation, is an incredibly important and essential job. So we public defenders are essential workers. We are frontline workers. So when everything shut down in March 2020, we were still going to court. And, you know, over the past year, when so many people were isolated and quarantining at home, I was seeing so many people. I probably talked to like hundreds of clients a week. So I'm always interacting, and it's different degrees of interactions. There's on the spectrum of like people, there's so many different types. So it certainly is a plus. I'm not sure if it's required though. Patience is incredibly important and required in this job. It is an incredibly difficult job, but very rewarding, alhamdulillah. And it is just, it's a lot of work. I have over 250 cases for clients. And so it requires a lot of patience, multitasking, and triaging as well. Dedication to serving the community. That goes back to my previous slide where I mentioned that someone has a demonstrated interest in public service. This job is, as I mentioned, very rewarding, alhamdulillah. It's the best job in the world. I could talk about it all day. I do talk about it all day. If you'd ask my husband to talk about it too much. It is incredibly hard at the same time. But every day I'm so humbled by the privileges that I've been awarded, alhamdulillah, and that I have the privilege to give back to the community as well. What people are going through, and certain people outside of our common family circles, social circles, our community at large, we really sometimes don't have any idea what some people are going through. And so I find so much of my job being tied to like the basic principles of our faith, like compassion, forgiveness, serving your community, helping the less fortunate. So much of that is built into this job, and it's why I love it so much. It's also, by that same token, it's not for the faint-hearted. You need to have thick skin. The clients can be, most of them are so nice and so helpless and so thankful for your help. Some of them are very difficult. Some of them are struggling with like mental illness. Some of them are struggling with addiction and they need help. And they may not be the nicest to you at the same time. It is a very, very demanding job. So not for not for those that don't have thick skin. And it may be, perhaps I should have put another asterisk here because I don't think I really had that thick skin when I started this job, but I definitely evolved and of course, through and also there's a lot of failure with this job as well. It's not for those who like to always win. In fact, as a defense attorney, I've started to redefine what winning, quote unquote, is. So if you get your client into some counseling and therapy over some jail time, that is a win. If you save your client from losing his job by getting him out of jail and getting him back to his family of 4 children, that is a win. So we define wins very differently here, but it can be taxing at the same time. So that was sort of required skills, and this is more so recommended interest and skills for success in this job. I'm gonna make sure I'm on time here. So some recommended interest, again, you probably have noticed there's an underlying theme here: serving your community and giving back. Very, very important. Helping underprivileged and vulnerable individuals, as I mentioned. So this right here composes a large part of my clients. A lot of my clients are homeless. A lot of them are undocumented, they're non-citizens. And so when you're charged with a crime, they're no matter how small of a crime, and right now I do misdemeanors, so they are pretty small and petty right now. Probably next year I'm going to be doing more serious crimes like felonies. But if you're charged with any crime and you're not a citizen, there's very real and severe immigration consequences like deportation. And so a lot of these clients are undocumented, very scared and nervous. They're poor. That's, of course, like I am the court appointed attorney. So you've commonly heard officers give that advisement. If you have the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you. And then if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided to you free of charge. So that's me. All of my clients are poor because they can't afford a private attorney. So I don't charge them, I get paid by the county, and I'll get into that a little bit later. And they're otherwise marginalized, they're either minorities, people of color, just very, very vulnerable and underprivileged people. So the interest, I put this into interest because it's a willingness to serve these people who have so little and are so helpless. Recommended skills, again, these are not required. They can be acquired and learned through experience. If there's anything I've learned as a lawyer is that you can learn to do almost anything on the job. A lot comes with experience. You can learn to make a closing argument. You can learn how to write like a great motion to try to win a case for your client. You can learn all of that, but certain skills can't be acquired. Certain can. So these are things that can be helpful or recommended. And I'm not sure if are you all in college or high school? We can talk about that a little bit more during the question portion, but speech and debate in high school, I didn't do it. I think it is, looking back, I think it is very fruitful and it can benefit you a lot. Because again, it's the concept of getting comfortable debating a topic, any topic, with some other side, someone who has a view opposing yours. How do you address their view, and how do you then persuade the judge or whoever it is that you are right, or that your position is stronger, or it serves the better interest, whatever it may be. So I think this is a good starting place, and I wish I had done that. Naturally, I just debated a lot of people naturally, so I got that cheesy line growing up a lot, like, oh, you like to debate, you should become a lawyer, and so I don't know, maybe perhaps that is a bit of why I chose this path. Theater and drama can be important. I didn't do this either, but again, looking back, I can see how this could be helpful. This is because I have here a courtroom versus a desk job. This is not your typical 9-to-5 desk job. You are in court meeting, again, hundreds of different people. Each fact or case is so different. And when you're in trial, a lot of it is, I don't want to diminish or minimize the role of a jury trial, but there is a lot of theatrics involved. You are there advocating for your client. And when you are speaking to 12 people, jurors, who are going to decide whether your client is guilty or not guilty. Theatrics is a big part of trial. You know, you don't want to be boring in your presentations, in your arguments. I think it's a skill that would be well served in this field. Communication and writing, as I mentioned, public speaking was sort of a required interest here or skill. Strong writing as well. If I'm not in court arguing, making an oral argument, I'm writing a motion and then I'm filing it in court. And then I'm arguing or explaining to the judge that this is the law, this is what it says, this is why the prosecution, their argument is weak, and this is why the defense's position is strong. So your writing skills need to be very strong. I will say, though, that you learn how to write in law school. You learn how to rethink, and you learn how to write completely differently in law school. So they're not really required either, but certainly a benefit. Negotiation, such a big part of my job, is that before we go to trial, you try to negotiate a case. If there's no negotiation, then there's no resolution, and then you just have to go to trial. So most cases, 95% of cases do resolve. It's only that 5% of cases that go to trial. So it is rare. A big part of the job is communicating. And I can get specific examples later. In the interest of time, I want to be mindful. But it really is. It's like, if you had a prior career as like a car salesman, or if you were working in any kind of sales job, I think that could also be incredibly beneficial, because the ability to negotiate with another person is very important. Interpersonal relationships and communications, again, this is a very people person kind of job. You're always talking to people, different types of people. The ability to interact with and build a rapport with the client, very important. Doesn't always happen at first, and so it's something that you gradually can strengthen and acquire, but it's definitely a people person job. A lot of face-to-face interaction. Earning potentials. So public defender salaries vary because this is a government funded job, and it is funded at the local or county level. So Bay Area counties, alhamdulillah, are very well funded versus more rural counties. So in the beginning, I had mentioned that I used to work at the Law Foundation of Silicon Valley doing civil defense. And when I decided to make that switch to criminal defense, I actually didn't do anything criminal defense related in law school. So I had to start from the ground up and build my experience. And it was hard because I wasn't a law student. I was an attorney, but I was just changing my field. And so a lot of people, I'd gotten advice from a lot of people, and I was not getting a job in the Bay Area. A lot of people told me that if you want to get a job in the Bay Area, because it's a very competitive place to work in this field, you need to go rural, get that experience, and come back and apply. And so that's what I did. I got my first public defender job in Shasta County. That's way up north in Redding. So it's like 4 hours north of here. It's very rural, almost no people of color, definitely not a Muslim community there. And so I worked there for 8 months. I did 4 trials in like 8 months, and I was able to come back home and get a job. And the salary difference in that rural job in Shasta County versus the Bay Area was incredible. It's incredibly, like, such a vast difference. So it really depends which county you work in. Alhamdulillah, in the Bay Area, and here I work in Santa Clara County, the average salary brackets are, the entry level is 0 to 2 years as an attorney. You start at 6 figures, alhamdulillah. It's very well paid, and it is therefore very competitive. It's hard to get a job. So I had to go somewhere else to get the trial experience to get back here. I did have one other county job in between. It was Monterey County and Salinas. So I was commuting from the Bay Area to Salinas for about 10 months. And I did 4 more trials there. So when I came to Santa Clara County, I had 8 jury trials as experience, and I got hired. And now I'm at the mid-level as an attorney right now. So I've been here about 5 years, working in this field for 5 years, here in the county for 3 years. And so the other level would be the high level, 7 to 10 years. And then you have a veteran level, people who have been here for 15, 20 years. The average retirement age for people in my office is more than 15 years. Some people retire after 20, 25 years. And the reason for that is because this is a government position. So the government benefits are also very, enticing, I guess is the word I should say. You get a pension, which is almost unheard of nowadays. A lot of jobs just don't have a pension really anymore. There's early retirement benefits. A lot of people don't. You can retire at like 62 versus the average age is like 65 or something. And it is very well paid, alhamdulillah. I'm very fortunate for that. I do want to take a moment though to say that I didn't pursue this job for the money. That is definitely an added benefit to it that I never anticipated. I have dedicated my career to public service. And so when I worked at a nonprofit organization, it was definitely not for the money. It's for, so that's one thing I've stressed throughout is that if you would like to do this type of work, and specifically trial law, helping these types of people, that probably shouldn't be your primary motivation, though it is nice, alhamdulillah, I cannot complain about that. Work-life balance. As I mentioned, this is a very difficult job. I need to constantly, I'm actively prioritizing self-care and familial obligations. It's, alhamdulillah, I have such a supportive husband and family, so that definitely helps. And I couldn't do it without that, but it is an extremely difficult job and taxing. It's not your typical 9-to-5 job, especially when you are preparing for or in trial. When that is the case, you're in trial, you can expect to work long nights, but generally you can expect to work weekends routinely. I work almost just about like every weekend just to stay ahead. It's not like I'm working all weekend, but I'll work a few hours every weekend, especially on a Sunday, just to prepare for the week ahead. As I mentioned, it is an extremely high volume of cases. So if you don't do that, you just naturally fall behind. So it's sort of part of my, back to up here, part of my self-care is just to spend a few hours, dedicate that to preparing for the week, reviewing my cases, so on and so forth. So I would say on average, I work about 50 to 60 hours. A normal quote unquote 35 to 40 hour work week, which is like your typical 9 to 5 job, that is possible in my office. Again, I can only speak about the experience of my office currently, and the other 2 offices that I did work in. We have, my office kind of rotates attorneys, so you're not always doing the same thing, which I appreciate, and I can see the wisdom in that, is to prevent burnout. So they put some people who are on a trial assignment. Right now I'm on a trial assignment, and I have been for 2 years now. I should be moving off of that assignment in a few months, maybe at the end of the year, and perhaps I'll be put on a rest assignment. And that's pretty much like not a trial assignment. You still have other pre-trial court appearances, but you won't be on the trial calendar. And so they'll rotate you on, and then like after doing that for about 18 months, then I'll get back on a trial assignment and then off. And so I guess it's possible in those times. So there's also special assignments for new or expecting mothers. So I think that's really forward thinking for an employer to prioritize that and know that a woman, a new mother or expecting mother, or even like a mother of, who has many children, they recognize the family obligations there. So when looking for a job or a place to work also, it's important to know the culture and the priority, what your employers prioritize. So for me, it's very important for employers to address like the well-being of employees, promote mental health awareness. This is all to prevent burnout. You don't want to crash and burn so quickly in your career that you can't do this. You want to, inshallah, like have a healthy work-life balance so that you can sustain this type of work for the long term, if that's what you decide to do. And so geography, this job, as I mentioned, is available everywhere. And that's because every county in every state in this country must have a public defender office. And if they don't have an actual office, they need to have a panel or like a list of court-appointed attorneys to represent indigent, which basically means poor, or people who cannot afford an attorney. So court-appointed just means that the judge has appointed you, like, hey, Myra, you are appointed to represent this person free of charge because they can't afford an attorney and they have a right to an attorney. So the court or the judge will appoint you. And then what that means is that the government or the county will pay you, not the client. And this profession, indigent or public defense, is a fundamental right that's enshrined in the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution. So that right there just shows you that, so this is, I'm sure by now you guys all know about the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments. My job is in the Sixth Amendment of the Constitution. So I think that's very cool that my job was born out of like basically the founding fathers' most critical document at the time of like, this country's founding or soon thereafter. And this is what the Sixth Amendment reads. I wanted to take a moment just to read it for you. And I bolded like important parts of it. In all criminal prosecutions, that just means when you're charged with a crime, the accused, which is the person who's obviously accused of a crime, my client, the accused shall. That is a very powerful legal word, which means like there's no negotiating. This has to happen. The accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. Okay, so that's what I do. I'm a trial attorney. That's also your right to a trial is in the Sixth Amendment as well, by an impartial jury of the state. That just means like a jury trial. We pick jurors. You guys all, maybe if you're 18 or over, you've been called for jury duty by now or not, but this is what it is. So an impartial jury of the state and district where the crime shall have been committed. The reason why I put district in blue is because we're talking about geography. So this is what I mean, that this job is in every county, in every state, or another word is district. That's how the courts have interpreted what district means when they wrote the Constitution back in the 1700s. We interpret that to be every county. And so in every district where the crime shall have been committed, which district should have been, previously ascertained by law. I'm going to skip ahead. So the right or the accused has the right to be informed of the nature and the cause of the accusation. Basically, you have a right to know what crime you're accused of and to be confronted with the witnesses against him. So this is a big part of my job, is that at trial, you cross-examine people. I'm sure you watch the jury trials on TV or in movies. And so the defense attorney will have an opportunity to cross-examine like the police officer that the state calls. And so this is what that means. To have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor. That just means if you're accused of a crime, you have a right to present a defense and you have a right to have the court bring in people to testify on your behalf. These are all fundamental rights, and all basically this entire Sixth Amendment describes my job and what I do. And finally, to have, and in bold, the assistance of counsel for his defense. This right here is my job, the assistance of counsel. So it's often called the Sixth Amendment right to counsel or assistance of counsel. And so that is why this job is so important, because it's written into the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution. And for that reason, when we're looking at trends of the industry, when you're talking about or thinking about job stability, this job is constitutionally mandated by the Sixth Amendment. There is no way this job is ever going away. It's always going to be there because it is so, so, so important for those people that can't afford an attorney, but that you're in, and if you are accused of a crime. So, and for that reason, because it's constitutionally mandated, there's a lot of incentivized benefits, as I mentioned, if you're a government employee. Talking about now work environment, I broke this down into two categories. So when you're in court, it's very formal. There's adversarial roles. What I mean is like, it's an adversarial system. There's one side versus the other. So it's the prosecution versus the defense. And so I'm on the defense, and the prosecution is the state or the government. This job or this environment can be cutthroat and competitive. That's not, it sounds negative, and sometimes it is, but it's nothing too alarming. It's just sort of the nature of the system. But if you keep in mind that you are helping someone who is sometimes falsely accused of a crime, sometimes they were targeted by police, or they're victims of police violence, brutality, yet they're the ones who end up charged with the crime. If you keep that goal in mind, that you're helping your community, this shouldn't be an issue. There is also subtle discrimination. Subtle, it's not overt, especially in the Bay Area. We're in a little bubble where we're in a more progressive area, and so people are a lot more understanding. And the reason for this is due to the overall lack of diversity in this profession historically. So in the past, the legal profession, lawyers were predominantly white, male-dominated profession. And so you still have a lot of those like older, now they're older lawyers, they're about to retire or have retired. But there's a new wave, like currently there's an increasing, there's a lot more representation, more female attorneys, people of color, first-generation immigrants. So it is nice, it's evolving, and that's why I said there's subtle discrimination here and there. Nothing too bad, again, because we are in the Bay Area. For attire in court, got to be very formal. It's conservative and respectful attire. Women and men need to wear suits, need to wear traditional colors. So it's, in the beginning, it was fun. It could be kind of tiring to wear a suit like every day. Because I know especially those who are like in the tech world in the Bay Area, it's very laid back. So it's a little different in that sense when I hear about my other friends in tech who can wear like, I don't know, leggings to work every day or work from home, you know. In the office though, it is more informal. It's very laid, when I don't have court and I'm just working on my cases, laid back, very little micromanaging, flexible hours if you're not in court. So generally I don't have court on Thursdays. So that is my day where I'm very flexible. You know, I have the type of job, alhamdulillah, where like if I needed to run an errand at 10 a.m., I can do that, you know, so long as you don't have court and you just get your work done. So that is something that's really important to me. I don't like to be micromanaged. I think that if I'm doing my job, you'll know. And if I'm not doing my job, you'll certainly know. And so that is something that's very important to me. If I'm not in court, then I want to have that flexibility. Attire in the office, very casual also. So I can wear the jeans or leggings or lounge wear if I want on court, which is nice. And that's all I have for my presentation now. I know that this is more so a path to give you some insight about the path to becoming a trial attorney and what it takes. So again, I could do a whole other presentation about my job. I know it is somewhat of a different kind of job. And anyway, I will, with that in mind, I'll just open it up to questions if you have any.
Thank you, Mahira. That was an excellent presentation, very useful. A lot of details that I hope our youth find useful with respect to pursuing a career. In order to sort of break the ice with questions, I wanted to ask a question on behalf of our youth. If you have a strong sense of right and wrong, is this the right profession for you? Because I know that not always justice is served the way you think it should be. So what guidance would you give to our youth there?
Yeah, thank you. That's a good question. And so my first slide was, oh, I can't figure it out. Okay, my first slide was working as a defense attorney in the criminal legal system, and that I used to say criminal justice system, and I am consciously not saying that anymore. And so now I say criminal legal system. And that's because it is actually a very unjust system, I think. And these are my opinions, of course. People may have different opinions. Having been working in here for this system for 5 years, I think it is broken. I think it's racist. I think, and of course, we all know that true justice is with Allah. So if you have a strong sense of right and wrong, maybe this won't be for you, because as I mentioned or alluded to earlier, every single day I witness so much injustice on small levels, on very more egregious, like really disturbing levels. And so much of the law also is about technicalities as well. So you can win on a technical issue, even though the greater issue wasn't addressed or is not on your side. You can lose on a technical issue, and that shouldn't matter, because on a whole, it is so wrong what just happened. So I would say that shouldn't deter you from it, but you should be mindful of that. And then I think once you're exposed to a little bit more, maybe you'll be more at ease with that. I'm not sure if I'm answering the question, but and perhaps that goes to show that it is a hard question, but I will say that true justice is with Allah. This system is not perfect. And people need to, I guess, make peace with that. I guess I just try to do the best I can for my client. As every attorney who practices, and that's why you need to get a license, you need to take in continuing ethics. You can't do anything unethical. And so there is always this moral compass that's there, but that's a tough question. I'm not sure if I can answer that appropriately.
Oh, that's a great answer. Thank you very much. Any questions from our participants? Amir wants to know if you have any tips for getting scholarships.
Yes. So now, I don't want to date myself, but I'm a lot older than all of you. And so the game has probably changed a lot since my time. And from my understanding, there's a lot more opportunities and avenues available for scholarships. So one place that was around when I was applying is ISF, the Islamic Scholarship Fund. I encourage you all to become familiar with that program. And I think they do have a public interest scholarship program. For the women on this, in this chat, there was an organization I was involved in while I was in law school. It's called Ms. JD. That is more geared towards corporate attorney, people who are pursuing corporate jobs. And when I joined that organization, I really tried to make a push for like more public interest inclusion as well. So I got like $500 from them, not a whole lot, but any little bit counts or helps. So Ms. JD is another one. And now there's, there's like these minority, bar associations. So bar, as I mentioned, is that bar exam that you have to take. Every county has a local bar association. So if you Google like the Santa Clara County Bar Association, for like young attorneys or aspiring attorneys, they might have some scholarships available there. As for tips for scholarships, those are just sources. For tips, I would say, of course, academics is so important because there'll be merit-based academic scholarships. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Do well in school, inshallah, you'll be rewarded on those merits. Another part of it, and a big part of becoming a lawyer, and if you go to law school, networking. You just have to go to these legal events. Sometimes it's a pain and you really don't want to have to talk to people or force that conversation. I promise you it is rewarding. Get a business card for every person you meet. Follow up with them by email. Keep that conversation going, and then ask them if their company, their firm, or if they know of anyone offering any types of scholarships. So if I had to distill it, I would say good grades, networking, And then really also just Google. I think this generation is in a completely different world, for better or worse. And in this scenario, it's better. You have unlimited resources at your tips, because of the internet, social media, and of course, like programs now here like Shine, this stuff wasn't available through my local masjid growing up. So you want to utilize all those people, and I'll put my information in the chat as well if you'd like to email me, and we can also touch base further if this piqued your interest.
Thank you. Did you get a chance to get Eliza's question? She's asking about extracurricular activities.
Yes, I see that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the question from Eliza is, all right, I'm sorry, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly. What other extracurricular do you recommend doing? What type of volunteer work should we do? Should we get an internship with a real lawyer? Okay, so I'll take this question by question. Other extracurriculars you can do. So something you could, it's a public courtroom if you have time off, and now with COVID, we are allowing more people into the courtroom. Of course, masks are required. Just observe court. Just go observe real life courtroom. It's very different than what you see on TV or in the movies. And so I did that a few times while I was in law school. If I didn't have class one day, I would just go into court and observe people. And civil versus criminal is very different. I can't speak too much about the civil world. I haven't done that in a long time. So observing court. If you're interested in a career in public interest trial law, I think just getting involved with community organizations, volunteering your time, very important. And that will, again, demonstrate that you have a dedication to your community. So, any type of like CARE, local soup kitchens, nonprofits. There's a great organization that we work very close with called Silicon Valley Debug. They're always looking for people to help in some kind of way. So just getting out in the community and doing that work, I would say. I think that also answers the volunteer work that you could do as well. So many organizations also are looking for volunteers for, like, I think, an immigration clinic. If you reach out to me, I can keep an eye out, and if I get an email, I can forward it along. But a lot of times we need non-lawyer volunteers to help with like basic legal stuff. And of course, you can't practice or do the legal part of it, but working with an attorney and kind of just like volunteering at an immigration clinic or things of that nature. Should we get an internship with a real lawyer? So I'm not sure what exactly you mean by that. I think internships are required no matter what field you go into. When you go to law school, you have to have internships. The more you do, the better. I encourage you all in law school, try different things, figure out what you like and don't like. Nothing will be a waste. If you do an internship and you didn't like it at all, it's not a waste. You learned that you didn't like that. So when I shared that I used to work at the ACLU of Northern California, I was working on something very interesting. It was about the death penalty and how it's racist and how it's applied and all of that stuff. So it was very interesting intellectually for me. But what I realized at the ACLU is that, like, I don't want to do policy work. I don't want to do legal policy work. I want to have a client and have like a face-to-face interaction. I want to know who my client is or who I'm helping. So I want that direct interaction. And that's what I realized when I was at the ACLU, that policy is not for me. It's very important, but not for me. And yes, a real lawyer. So I'm not sure there's only just lawyers. There's no real or fake. You go to law school, you pass the bar exam and you're a lawyer. So you definitely want to make sure you work with someone who's licensed. And that's the only type of lawyer.
If I may speak on behalf of her, like, you can, if you go to law school and don't do the bar exam, are you still considered a lawyer?
Okay, I see. No, you're not. You are not a lawyer or an attorney until you pass that bar exam. So that's actually a very good point. The JD is the degree that you get after law school. You can do a lot with the JD. So, but you can't practice law with the JD. You are not a lawyer until you pass the bar exam.
So you mentioned you can't do a lot, you cannot do much without the bar exam, or you can? Like, can you work in corporate environment without passing the bar exam?
No, you cannot. You cannot.
Okay.
You cannot practice law in corporate, immigration, criminal, civil, unless you pass the bar exam. But a lot of people get their JD and then they go work in like tech or something. You know, I think a JD is still a degree that benefits, that can help you a lot. But my advice is law school is very expensive. So if you go to law school, you should probably go with the intention of being a licensed attorney. If you go just to get the JD, I'm not sure that's the best choice. I think some people go with the intention to be a lawyer, and then they realize that that's not what they want to do. And that's fine, that happens. But make sure your intention, if you decide to go to law school, is the intention to practice law, get your license. Because otherwise, I think that's a lot of money that you could probably save and still get another job without a JD. And so that would be probably also, as best as possible, before you go to law school, make sure that this is what you actually want to do. And that's why those internships are important. There's pre-law internships, like pre-law school internships. Go to court, see if that's what you want to do. It's not what it looks like on TV. I'm happy to talk to anyone one-on-one. If you'd like to come to court one day, we can even coordinate that. I've left my email in the chat. So please feel free to reach out. And it's something that I am just coming up on 10 o'clock right now. So my last, I guess, comment would be that this is a field that's, as I mentioned, really lacking in Muslim representation. And I think it would be wonderful to see more Muslim defense attorneys, people giving back to their community. I understand the corporate salary is probably very, very enticing and appealing, but you know, that is also a very tough job in many different respects. It requires a lot of hours. So, you know, it would be nice to see more Muslim representation in this field. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you all again soon.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Maher. I hope the attendees found this useful. We'll make our recording available on YouTube. So again, thank you very much. We're really glad you made time for our youth here.
Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
So folks, I'm going to stop the recording.